This is it, the moment you've all been waiting for. It is time to get into my NRL 2023 entire ladder full season preview prediction, 17-1, and it starts right now. G'day guys, and welcome back to the Entertain House YouTube channel. I have been doing ladder prediction since the start of 2019. I started doing NRL YouTube back in 2018, and here we go for another fantastic year of rugby league. In 17th position, it's the first team to finish in 17th as we have the new inclusion of the Dolphins. The Dolphins are very short price favourites at about $2.80 for this wooden spoon. A lot of people tossing the St. George Illawarra Dragons in the bunch as well. But there's a team just below that for mine, and that team in 17th is the Newcastle Knights. Now the Newcastle Knights, the fact is, they're just not winning home games. Look, if they prove me wrong, they prove me wrong. They're coming off a very poor season. A lot of games where they scored 10 points or less throughout the season last year. They're trying to experiment Kalen Ponga at 5'8" again. Will it work? He looked okay attacking in the trial, but the defense was poor. Their defense throughout the trial looked poor. Dominic Young is on the way out of the club. He could actually be out of the club next week. For mine, things are going wrong at Newcastle. We've seen them get wooden spoons in the past, and I think this is another year where they might add a wooden spoon to the trophy cabinet. As to the highs of the club, I think signing Adam Elliott's great. Signing Greg Marju is fantastic. But I do see this team being around that bottom four, and they're going to be my pick for the wooden spoon. In 16th, second last spot, normally the wooden spoon, I'm going to go with the St. George Illawarra Dragons. I tried to find good things about the Dragons this season, but I couldn't find too many. Ben Hunt's obviously re-signed with the club, coming off a huge season. Will he perform as well now that he's getting paid that money? Zach Lomax has declared that he wants to be back in an Origin jersey for the New South Wales Blues, being his target. So he's probably going to have a great season nonetheless. They've been playing Moses Mbye at the 6. Jaden Sullivan is probably the high of the club, coming into that 9 role. They just haven't recruited well in the off-season for mine as well. You've signed Zane Musgrove, Jacob Liddell. I just really think that they probably should have thrown more money into the club, and they're definitely going through a rebuild phase next year. This is the last season where if the Dragons fail, I feel like there's going to be a clean out. There's even rumours that Des Hasler is even being talked at to join the club late this year or into 2024 as a coach. Their pre-season form was shocking. They did not look great at all against the Rabbits, and that score absolutely flattered them in the end. They played okay, but not great against St Helens. I was there for that match. I look forward to watching them throughout the season. I try and get to a couple Dragons games throughout the year, but this is a team I see struggling. I think they're just going to avoid the wooden spoon. In 15th position, I've got the Dolphins. Yes, I think the Dolphins will be around that bottom four. I think most people expect that. First year at the club. They haven't really got anyone who can, open up a game. They've still got some nice players in the Hammer. Sean O'Sullivan looking great in the halves there at Penrith as a backup when Cleary was out. You've got the leadership of Kenny Bromwich, Jesse Bromwich, and the Storm's back rower, Felice Kafusi. You got Ray Stones. Look, there is some great names involved in the side, but they genuinely probably deserve to be the favourites for the spoon. I probably would have had them about $3, $4, $2.30 or $2.80 is very, very short for them to be wooden spoon. It's Wayne Bennett's team. He's going to have something to bring. They're definitely not going to play finals. I can tell you right now that the Dolphins will not make the top 8. But I could see them around 11th, 12th. But in my personal prediction, I think a reasonable spot to put them is 15th on the NRL ladder. At the bottom of the top 4, I've got the New Zealand Warriors. The Warriors have recruited really, really nicely. Murata Niokore, Chance Nickel-Klokstad, Tamare Martin. There probably is some more names that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. They're going to get a lot more games in New Zealand where they're showing that they can win over there in New Zealand. They are a very hard team to get a read on every year. Last year I had them in 9th position. They're around where I've got them for this season. I think 14th is where they're going to be, at the very top of that bottom 4. There's just not a lot to like about the Warriors. Look, the recruitment looks great. Can they perform though? Is it just a team on paper, that type of standard? Sean Johnson's form was very, very poor. And I wonder whether he can kind of bounce back from that. We're all looking forward to seeing him in the Warriors jersey, but now you've got players like Luke Metcalf knocking on the door of that jersey once he does return from injury. But I'm going to put the New Zealand Warriors in 14th position. 13th, this team for mine is a team that is, again, hard to get a read on, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as some people think. I've seen some people put them in the top 8. That's absolutely crazy. However, their recruitment has probably been some of the best recruitment in the entire NRL. It's just whether that recruitment is a team on paper or whether it can perform. And I think it leans more towards that paper than performance. I could be proven wrong by this team though, and it is the West Tigers. The West Tigers for mine, I think that they're going to finish in 13th position. I think they've got some nice signings in John Bateman, Isaiah Papali'i, who I'm going to tip it now. Isaiah Papali'i is going to be my buy of the year. Former Eel, coming from the Warriors, showed how good his form was. Started to go a little bit off track towards the end of the season. Was still a great player nonetheless. But I really think he's going to bring a lot to this West Tigers side and potentially find himself in another Dally M back row of the year. They've also got Charlie Staines coming into their side. So look, they have recruited fairly well for the most part. It's just whether they can put that performance in. Saw some shocking performances from the West Tigers last year. The year previously saw some bad performances as well. Is there signs of improvement? Probably. Again, it's just trial form. You can't read too much into that. Adam Doueihi looks fantastic and looks like that long-term option at the club, whether it be in the 6 or the centres, but I think his position is number 6. So yeah, the Tigers for mine. I actually have a bet with Tane, guys. If you don't know Tane jumps on the channel sometimes and we do either Dolphins or World Cup Rugby League matches. If the Tigers finish above 11th, so 1st to 10th, I have to shout him Xbox Live for the entire year. And if the Tigers finish between 11th or 12th and 17th, he has to get me one courtside seat to the Sydney Kings, who are in this year's NBL Grand Final and hopefully in next year's NBL Grand Final. But yeah, the Tigers, I'm going to put the Tigers in 13th position. I think it's a pretty fair spot to put them. And I think some people, just as a joke, will put them in 9th once again. To 12th position, this was a tough one to pick. There are a few teams that could be fighting around that. This team could even be considered lower. I do know some people that are tipping this team to be bottom 2. I personally think that this is a team that shows a lot of heart throughout the season. They're pretty good at home for the most part. They definitely struggle in some games early on, but they can get into the grind and bring you back to their level and ultimately get the win. Still got players that have been included in Origin sides, whether it be the Blues or the Maroons. And that team is the Canberra Raiders. Their form in the trials was very, very poor, but for the most part, they've still retained most of their squad, all but Adam Elliott. And obviously the early injury of Xavier Savage is really going to affect them. Tom Starling looks like he may be overlooked early weeks. You've got Zach Wolford and Danny Levi, 2 hookers, 1 starting, 1 on the bench. Starling, for me, should be at another club. He's a fantastic player and he doesn't get enough credit as for what he does to the game. Jack Whiten, he needs to step up for this side. Joe Tarpanay was absolutely fantastic in the back half as well as in the World Cup. Can he bring that type of form into 2023? I think he can, absolutely. And this is a team that made the top 8 last year, knocked off the Melbourne Storm, then were flogged by the Parramatta Eel, but still a great job to get to the finals. Will they be back in the finals? I think a lot of people are really expecting them not to be, so they could be that surprise packet of the year again. But for me personally, I just don't see it from the Canberra Raiders, and that is why I'm going to put them in 12th. I was going to put them lower, but I think they're a team that can show a bit of heart and get some very important wins at some crucial times of the year. In 11th, I've got a team that may surprise you. I know a lot of you are tipping this team to be the bottom 4. I know that they weren't great last year, very similar side to last year. They have had a nice trial form. They've had some nice signings, in my opinion, and I think this team will push towards the top 8. Absolutely could see this team finishing in 9th as well. I could see them making the 8, but I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. And it is the Gold Coast Titans in 11th position. I think that the Titans' recruitment of foreign is great. Sam Verrill's great. CANBERRA, we saw him in the trial. He looked fantastic, and some of their young guns. They have an interesting choice to make. Tanner Boyd looks like he's going to be that 7 long term. You've also got Toby Sexton, who could come back into the side at some point. You've got the likes of AJ Brimson, Fafita. This is a team that made the top 8 just a few years ago. Didn't make it last year. Wasn't a great year for Titans fans, and I think it's going to be a much better year. I know a lot of you are tipping them lower. I think they don't deserve it. I think they have a nice roster. The only worries is their draw, and BKR Sport has spoken about this fact that a lot of their game seem to be in the boiling heat. They never kind of get a night game. It's all this Gold Coast heat at that stadium, which makes it very tough for them. And if they had a nicer draw, you might even put them in the top 8. It's a fantastic squad. It's a great roster. But for me, as some of these points point out as a weakness, I'm going to put the Titans in 11th position. Getting closer and closer to the top 8, and we're going to get into 10th position, and that is a team that was fantastic in the preseason. There has been a little bit of recruitment, but not too much against this side. This is a side that definitely underperformed last season. It is a team I had high expectations for last year. It is a team that I actually consider as a big smoky for the top 8. I wouldn't be surprised if some people have it in there. You think back to Latrell Mitchell and coming back from America, what he was able to do. The same is done for Tom Trbojevic. In 10th place, I've got the Manly Sea Eagles. The Manly Sea Eagles have a new coach in Anthony Seibold, an assistant coach in Shane Flanagan. A great coaching combination, a great decision to spend that money to repair Trbojevic, and hopefully another healthy season with no hamstring trouble. Cherry Evans winding back the clock, playing his best footy. This could be a huge season for the Manly Sea Eagles, and they are a big smoky for that top 8 in my opinion, but I think they're going to fall 2 or 3 games short of the top 8. I think they'll spend some time in the top 8 throughout the season. I think they'll find themselves in 6th or 7th a couple of times, but overall, I feel like Manly will be fighting for it. They'll just miss it. Ruben Garrick has some fantastic form coming into the season. A lot of people think he could be the top point scorer. And Manly Sea Eagles for mine in 10th. To 9th position, this is it. We're about to get into my 2023 top 8. In 9th position is a team that was in the top 4 last year. Didn't finish in the top 4. Played some fantastic footy. Wasn't consistent towards the back half of the year. A few injuries, but overall lost themselves a final spot. And I think that team is going to do it again. This is a team I would like to see in the top 8. They have signed Reece Walsh back at fullback. They have a nice roster, but I feel like they're going to miss it. In 9th position, in back-to-back years, I've got the Brisbane Broncos. A lot of people have the Broncos in the top 8. A lot of people have the Broncos in the same position that I do have them. I have them in 9th purely because I don't think they can cover some of the positions if a player was to go down. I think if they were healthy for the entire season, they could easily push for a top 6 spot. But I think that injuries are part of the game. You don't wish injury on anyone. But I think there will be some injuries throughout the season that's going to kind of wreck the Broncos again. I think they're going to have some mind games on what happened last year. It's going to be in the back of their head, how well they performed and how they let it slip. And I think it's going to happen again. It could even make their season fall apart and finish lower, but I don't think that's going to happen. Like the Manly Sea Eagles, I think they'll spend a lot of time in the 8. A lot of time in the 8. Maybe not as much as last year, but the Broncos, they'll be fighting for the 8 in my predictions, but I'm going to go 9th. There you go. That is the bottom of the top 8 for my 2023 season. Let's move into the top 8. In the top 8, starting in 8th position, is the surprise packet of the year. It is a team that a lot of people for years have put them in the top 8, whilst I've said, nah, 9th, 10th, 11th. I've always disregarded it, but I think this is the time. They've got some great combinations. They've got some players that are looking ready to debut and bring impact to the side. They're coming off a great trial form. They've made some great signings. And not only that, they've made some great signings last year that lead to this year. I'm talking about the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. I think that the Bulldogs can find themselves in the top 8. I think that Reid Marnie brings a lot to the side. I think that there's still some great players like Luke Thompson who can run that ball hard. Some great combinations, Burton, Addo-Carr. You've got Kickout, damaging coming into your side as well. I mentioned some debutants that might come. Paul Amorotti, Jacob Preston. They look like they can cover if things were to happen in this side. A lot of depth in this Canterbury side. A great bench. You've got players like Ryan Sutton from the Canberra Raiders. I really like this lineup. And you've also got Hayes Perham getting a shot at fullback. We'll see how that goes. He's a player with a lot of potential. So for mine, I've got the Canterbury Bulldogs in 8th position. Moving into 7th position. This is a team that I have dropping off quite a lot purely because they have lost a lot of players. It was a huge season for them in 2022. And look, they have been a team that have been very dominant in regards to finals in recent years. And I think that even though it was a disappointing end to the season for them, they are still a team with a lot of potential. They have retained most of their players and they are building around the future for the most part. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, I am talking about my Parramatta Eels, guys. I am not the type of person to be biased, sit here and tell you why I believe the Eels will make the top 4. Because I think there are a lot of teams above us, I really do. But I still think Parramatta are going to play finals footy. I know there's been some people putting us outside the top 8, and I disagree with that. I think that the inclusion of Josh Hodgson is not as good as Reid Marnie, but he will bring that experience to the side. I think the inclusion of Jermaine Hopgood is huge. He could definitely find himself a Ken Thornett medal if he brings some form like his trials or his All-Stars game. He was playing fantastic. Mitchell Moses, it's not confirmed as of right now filming this, but it's looking more likely that he will sign with the club. Gutherson is looking fit. Campbell Gillard's looking fit. There is still a lot to like about this club, and I am trying my hardest to say 5th or 6th or higher, but I'm a realist, guys, and I think we're going to be playing finals. I think we're going to find ourselves in a lower position on the ladder, make it tougher for ourselves, but who knows what this team can come up with. I love my Parramatta Eels, but guys, I think we're going to finish in 7th position. We get into the top 6. Now, there is a team that I had, I believe, in 5th position last year. Some people had them in the 8. Some people had them outside the 8. They had a massive season. They overachieved, in my opinion. They had the Dally M winner, who now is going to be targeted. He still may back up that season, but he's going to have that Nathan Cleary kind of target on his back. And I am talking about the Cronulla Sharks. I believe both the Parramatta Eels and the Cronulla Sharks are going to drop out of the top 4 in 2023. I think there are some teams above them. I think they've got a great roster, some nice additions to the side. They are hard to beat at home as well. How will they go travelling is going to be the real question in regards to their ladder position. But I think as good as Hines is as a player, I think there's going to be a lot of people watching him at training, things like that, and there's going to be some plays that some teams are going to be able to beat the Cronulla Sharks in 2023. They are probably arguably one of the dark horses for the premiership. I believe they are about $12 odds. Most people will probably have them in the top 4. I still think they're going to have a fantastic season, making finals, but I think they are going to drop off, in my personal opinion, just a little bit. They've got strike across the park. They've got depth bench, so there's no reason for it to happen. But in my prediction, I'm going to say that they're going to finish in 6th. And this is where it gets tough. Before I get into the top 4, I need to speak about a team that I truly believe can make the top 4, that I truly believe is the dark horse for this entire NRL season, but I put them in 5th position. and that is the South Sydney Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs haven't signed anyone, but who cares? They've re-signed Latrell. They've re-signed Cody Walker. You've got the likes of Damien Cook, Cameron Murray. It's a dangerous side. Cody Walker being re-signed is huge. He is getting older. It feels like the Rabbitohs window has 2 years, this year, next year, left into it. They are, for mine, a massive smoky. They are probably a team that I was almost going to put in 3rd or 4th position, but I ended up going in 5th. They're going to have a massive season. Latrell is going to be that kind of key to the season. Cameron Murray's playing some fantastic footy. Even in the trials, he looks great. So, look, the Rabbitohs for mine, got them in 5th. I could arguably have them higher. I've got them in the BKR sweepstakes. So hopefully they win the comp so I can bag myself that money. But I'm going to go with 5th position. I think it's realistic. The Rabbitohs sometimes drop some games that they shouldn't, but they could be a side to beat and a very tough side in 2023. Now we move into the top 4. And in 4th position is a team that a lot of people have as their minor premiers. It is a team that has recruited well in this off-season. It is a team that is always talked about winning the premiership, but never does. It's been 4 years. I'm talking about the Sydney Roosters, and they have a fantastic side on paper. Joseph Manu's form coming into this season is wild. James Tedesco's back half of the season running towards that Dally M. If they get their combinations right and they have a back half of the season at the start of this season, this is going to be the team to beat. They are easily a team that could be in the top 2. A lot of people think that the grand final will be the Roosters and the Panthers. So a lot of people putting the Roosters already into the grand final. Dominic Young could potentially join the side throughout this 2023 season as well. So, and Brandon Smith joins the side as well. So there's a lot to like about the Sydney Roosters, but I still think there are some teams above them. I think they have a great roster. I think they're going to secure a top 4 spot in 2023. But I think there's 3 teams that I do have above the Roosters. In 3rd position, I have the Melbourne Storm. A lot of people writing off the Melbourne Storm. And if there's one thing you haven't learned, don't write them off. Last season was a little bit different. I actually predicted them in 5th position. There they were in 5th position. One of my best predictions for the year, while everyone else had them in the top 4. I think there were a couple people that had them outside the 8, but for the most part, everyone predicted them being top 4 because it seems like it. Now, the hard part about this is they didn't look great when Ryan Pappenhausen wasn't there. He's out for the first 6 weeks. But if you think after that 6 weeks, and that's why I don't have them as minor premiers, because I think they can push for it, but they may have a struggled start to the season, but they have still got Munster, Hughes, Harry Grant. There is still a lot to like. They still welcome some great players to their back row in Eli Katoa, Tariq Sim. Everybody thinks that they're losing all this experience. They've got Christian Welch, Nelson Asofa-Solomona. There is a lot to like for you Melbourne Storm fans, and I wouldn't believe most of those people saying yous aren't going to play finals or yous are going to finish in 7th or 8th, because I don't think it's going to happen. I think you're going to have a phenomenal season, and I've got the Melbourne Storm in 3rd position. 2nd spot, I have a team that has been dominant in recent years. It is, let's get it out of the way, it is the Penrith Panthers. I think that the Penrith Panthers are going to have another huge season. They could potentially get the minor premiership once again. Can they do a 3-peat? Not sure. They were beaten by St Helens. They've got a lot to like about their side. They are losing Api Coruscant in the middle. They are losing Kikau, so they don't have that damaging back rowers, but they have recruited nicely in Luke Garner and Zach Hosking. They are a tough side to get a read on right now because they've only really played 1 game, which was against St Helens. They didn't really play anyone in that pre-season trial against Parramatta, but I don't see this being a team that drops out of the top 4. I've seen people say 4th or 5th, and I think that's a bit unfair. I still think this is easily a top 2 side. I think Ivan Cleary's a fantastic coach. Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai work so well as a combination. They're going to win a lot of games this season. They're going to solidify a top 2 spot. but you'll have to find out whether I've got them in the grand final soon. And there you go. One team has not been mentioned. I am tipping the North Queensland Cowboys to get the minor premiership in 2023. They welcome back James Tarmow for a little reunion. Scott Drinkwater at the back. Tom Dearden developing as a young, great half. You've got Reece Robson, who's knocking on the door of that Origin form. Taumalolo, in the nicest way possible, has lost a lot of weight, has built into a machine. He looks in for a huge season. Go and check out his highlights. He's had some huge games. He looks like he's in for a massive season. Jeremiah Nanai has re-signed with the club. It is all coming together for a big season for the North Queensland Cowboys. We all wrote them off last year. We said they were going to get the spoon. They made it to the prelim. They only lost the prelim because Parramatta came back. They were leading. They are a team to be reckoned with. And the Cowboys, for mine, are my pick for the minor premiers. And Valentine Holmes, I didn't even mention his name. Great roster. Minor premiers in 2023. So now we get into my finals prediction. Week 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the final. So week 1 of the finals, based on this equation of the ladder, is the Cowboys going up against the Sydney Roosters. In that game, being up in Townsville, the Roosters seem to beat the Cowboys quite often. But I'm going to go with the Cowboys with the dominant season finishing in first. I'm going to go the Cowboys to win 13 points to 12. Then you've got the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the Canterbury Bulldogs. And I think the Rabbitohs have the Bulldogs covered. It's been a great season for Bulldogs, but they bow out against South Sydney 24-18. Then you've got the Penrith Panthers in a qualifying final against the Melbourne Storm. And I'm going to take the Storm here. If they're fully fit, Munster, Pappenhausen, Grant, all there. I'm going to go the Storm 22 points to 10. You have the Cronulla Sharks in Cronulla against the Parramatta Eels. And you know what? I genuinely reckon Parramatta can win at Cronulla. So I'm going to take the Eels 18 points to 12 with the Sharks and the Bulldogs bowing out for the season. Then it gets interesting. Week 2, you've got the Roosters and the Eels at Allianz. And I'm going to take the Roosters to defeat Parramatta. Week 2 is, as far as I have us now, 30-18. You've got the Penrith Panthers playing an elimination against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And I'm going to take the Rabbits here. I'm going to take South Sydney to get something special. They love a prelim. Rabbits 16, Panthers 10. Low-scoring defensive game. So in the prelim, you've got the Cowboys at Townsville against the South Sydney Rabbitohs and the Melbourne Storm against the Sydney Roosters. So I do have one of the teams that was in the top 4 bowing out, being the Penrith Panthers. I'm going to go with the Cowboys to end the Rabbits season. I could easily see the Rabbits winning this game purely because of what happened in Townsville and how far they want to go. I'm going with the Cowboys there, but I'm about to tell you my other grand finalist. I believe that the Rabbits could easily play this team. You've got the Melbourne Storm at home against the Sydney Roosters. At the time, Tedesco versus Pappenhausen, Sam Walker versus Cameron Munster. A lot to like about this matchup. And look, everybody is writing them off, and I'm going to take the Melbourne Storm to win 22-18. So I am going to have a repeat of the 2017 NRL Grand Final. I do believe that we could see something different in the Melbourne Storm and the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I believe they are a big chance of being their grand final day. But I'm going to tip the Cowboys versus Storm, with the Storm winning the premiership 28 points to 18 and Cameron Munster picking up the Clive Churchill medal. Well, there you go, guys. It has been hard to keep my ladder predictions secret, but I finally got them out. I hope you guys enjoyed them. Let me know who you think is going to be the wooden spooner. Let me know who you think is going to get the Clive Churchill medal. Who will be their grand final day? Can the Parramatta Eels go one better? You got to win one. You got to lose one, sorry, to win one. I love doing this video every year. It's a ton of fun. I get more excited as it goes on. That's my top 8. That's my bottom 8, my grand final. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're new around here. Enjoy round 1 of rugby league this weekend, guys.